Hi there, welcome back to Cisne con corbata. This week we're going to be taking some paintings of Renaissance babies and redrawing them in my style. And by some paintings I mean at least one and tops, I don't know, whatever number I feel like. While we're doing that, we're going to be discussing a few things about art style. Not necessarily discussing a way to find your own unique style, but the reasoning for that I will be telling you later. For now, let's start. A little warning before we start. This week I decided not to script my video. I usually script my videos to be able to catch my pronunciation, or rather my mispronunciation while I'm recording, but I didn't feel like it this week, so you just have to deal with it. I'm going to do my best to try to catch it as we go, but no promises. Renaissance babies are one of my favorite things ever. They are the most hilarious thing I have ever found. Don't even try to change my mind on that. You cannot change my mind on that. This is one of the things I don't think you will succeed even if you set your mind to, because look at them, they are hilarious. And you can be like, oh, but Byzantine babies are also really hilarious, but listen, they are hilarious because they are almost in the same time frame, okay? Byzantine babies come first, and then from there they evolved to Renaissance babies because, again, the time frame, they were really close. But the difference, at least for me, what makes Renaissance babies more hilarious is that with Byzantine babies, they don't really have most of the babies are just sitting or laying down. And when it comes to Renaissance babies, they are way more dynamic. So yeah, Renaissance babies are better. If this was musical theater, then Byzantine babies are the workshop and Renaissance babies are the Broadway production. Sorry, not sorry, just the way things are. Okay? So, to introduce you to my favorite Renaissance baby ever is this one. As far as I know, the author of this baby is unknown, and right now I cannot remember the name of the painting, but I'm going to put it somewhere around here when I edit it. Okay, and I think maybe I will have to censor him because, YouTube is weird. Art style is probably the thing we talk the most about when we are artists. When you start to enter the community, when you start to do art, there's always someone asking about art style, and even if they have already asked a million times about it, there's always more conversation about it. In fact, I'm not kidding, just a few minutes before starting recording this, I was talking to my friend Siri about art style, about how we have certain goals on the way we have our art look, not just overall, but also depending on the project. I was telling her about how I want my art to be a middle point between the midnight gospel and over the garden wall, and she told me about how her current project she wants to have this style that resembles European comics, specifically French comics. And I was looking at a lot of the reference she was mentioning, and they look stunning. But what we're going to with this is that we all have certain goals. We all have certain way we want our art to look like. Well, I think it's a good idea to have a point of reference to see, I want to take away this thing from this artist and this from this other artist and blend them to make something that feels more like me and that I also like. The famously known as stealing like an artist, They're taking things from other artists and blending them in a way that feels good for you and repeating it so much without looking at that reference anymore that it starts to being something that looks completely different, even if you borrow a lot of aspects. Even if it's not graphic arts, even if you are writing and you want a style of writing, or if you're a singer, you want this style to sing, it always boils down to that. Start taking different things that you like from other artists and blending it together until you find something you feel comfortable and happy with. But the thing that I'm going to is that even though it's really, really good and satisfying to have found something that is purely yours, I do not encourage the notion of finding a style and sticking with it forever. What I think is more useful is to have different kinds of styles. Maybe you have a style that is the one that you like the most and you feel the most comfortable with, and maybe that's your main style. But you can also have, and honestly I think you should have, other kinds of styles. I say this because if you get stuck in just one art style, it's the moment you stop growing, because you're just doing the same and the same, and at some point you stop experimenting. You need to keep experimenting in order to avoid burnout. Because I think about having just one style is that you start to get stagnant. It becomes too easy and the magic goes away. There's this thing called flow state, and you can recognize it when you start doing something and you're just enjoying it so much. You just stop feeling the time pass. It goes really quickly, you barely notice, and you're having fun at the same time. It's a really enjoyable experience. The thing about flow state is that this is such a satisfactory experience because it represents a challenge. Flow is composed by something you like to do, the ability to do it, but still a challenge, a level of challenge. Because when you start doing things that are just too easy without anything to challenge you, you start to get bored. Because if you take something that's really boring to you and keep repeating it almost every day, then you're going to stop enjoying it. And that's very easy to come by when it comes to drawing. That's the reason I think it's important not to get too focused on just one art style. Sure, it's fun to have a style that is recognizable, that people look and see, oh, this is from this person. But that's an external motivation, and what's more important is internal motivation, that you're really enjoying what you're doing, that you're really learning from what you're doing. And so that's the reason I encourage people and keep encouraging myself to go looking for more art styles. Or if you don't want to develop more than one art style, just to keep trying to improve yours. Like maybe you start with an art style that doesn't use hands. Then you can look to develop the ability to draw hands, maybe start drawing mittens, and then when you get used to drawing mittens instead of hands, then you start drawing the fingers. Or maybe you start playing with your style by designing characters or objects that are really different by comparison, but they still look cohesive. They still look like they belong to the same universe. That's a way you can keep developing your art style and keep using the same style without losing the flow state. Another thing about our style, there's not such a thing as a good or bad art style. No matter what definition of art style you look at, it always boils down to being consistent. It's a combination of all your quirks, all your strokes, all your color schemes, every way you deal with different poses. It's all about consistency. It's all about learning how to draw shapes in certain ways. And if you want to make a living through art, especially any branch of illustration, you don't really need an art style. What you need is to learn to be consistent in a variety of different art styles. In your portfolio and social media, you can choose to portray mainly the style that you feel the most comfortable with and the one you want people to hire you to do. but in most cases people will prefer people that can adapt to different art styles. And depending on the project, they may want your style but with some tweaks. So if you start learning how to be constant with art styles, regardless of it's your main style of another style, that will be of way more value than dominating just one. Like, people tend to say jack of all trades, master of none, as if it were a bad thing, when the full phrase is jack of all trades, master of none, but better than master of one. If you master just one thing, that really narrows down the things you are able to do. It narrows down your opportunity, not only in a financial or professional aspect, but also in a personal aspect. You stop growing, and the moment you stop growing, what are you even doing? If you know a little of everything rather than a lot of just one thing, you have more opportunity to take one thing from one place and translate it to another and creating new things, being more innovative and more original. It goes back to the whole stealing like an artist, taking things from different places and combining them until you create something new. Because let's be honest, if you try to do something entirely new, something that doesn't draw from any other place, you're not going to do anything. The sooner you can accept that everything that can be done is already done, the better. And that is not necessarily a bad thing or a bad attitude to take. Why? Simply because by that you are giving yourself more liberty to explore, more liberty to forgive yourself for doing things that are not completely original. You give yourself more room to fail. And the more room to fail you give yourself is the more room you have to succeed. I like to talk about it as if it was a bad printer. You are producing one good page and 99 that are bad. If you keep printing and printing and printing and printing, eventually you are going to have many good pages. Sure, the bad pages are still going to outnumber greatly, but you're not showing anyone the bad ones. The bad ones are something for yourself and yourself only. You're only showing the good ones. And listen, you can show the bad ones to other people if you want. If you want to teach them, if you want to inspire them. Look, this is what I did. But the thing is, even if it's just for yourself, you are already taking out the bad stuff and creating good stuff. It's about repeating until you find something good. I'm sure the printer analogy doesn't work forever, because if it's about printer, I don't think it's going to get better just by printing more. But we are not printers. We actually learn from our mistakes. So say the first 100 pages you had one that's good. Then the next time you print 100 pages, you are going to have 2 that are good. If you keep practicing, but truly practicing, by paying attention and being critical about your work and actively working to make things better, then eventually maybe 50 of those 100 pages will be good. But, because there's always a but, we all have to accept that there's always going to be at least one out of the 100 pages that is bad. That's something we cannot avoid, especially not if we want to keep the flow state. So here we have it, our magnificent Renaissance babies. Well, if they can still be considered Renaissance babies when they were drawn in this time and also in a completely different art style. Let me comment, tell me what do you think, and also tell me what are your thoughts in art style. Should artists strive for just one style or for many styles? Disagreeing with me is completely allowed. So if you want to keep the conversation going or send me your favorite Renaissance baby, I would love if you send me Renaissance babies. Please send them to me. You can do it in my social media. In every social media I use the handle at Cisne con corbata. It's written down in the description in case you don't know how to write that. I am mainly active in my Instagram and Twitter accounts, but I also have a Facebook page and a Tumblr. I don't know how to pronounce that, you have to deal with it. Give me a like, subscribe, click the notification bell to be the first one to know when I upload new art videos and even some video essays. But overall, enjoy Renaissance babies and try to draw your favorite in different styles because it's a lot of fun. I wish you a good day and an amazing life. See you next week. Goodbye.